So the first thing you notice is no Gentile was ever under the law of commandments. I do not believe that God ever intended to write the law on anything. That's in terms of writing it on pieces of stone as an external law. Why is that? Because in all of nature, God wrote the laws that governs nature within the creature itself. You don't have to teach a bird to fly. You don't have to teach a fish to swim. You don't have to teach a dog to bark. The law of God was written into all of nature so that they follow the pattern that God set for all of those creatures. And so you don't even see a dog born into a cat family, or a horse born into the ox family, or whatever. You see, the law of God was written in them. The interesting thing is that the only creature that has rebelled against the law of God has been man himself. And what kind of a man can you imagine that I have to go to and say, sir, I don't want you to kill anybody. You know that's a bad thing to do. Do I have to go and tell a man that he should not kill? No, sir. Does not everybody know that it's wrong to kill? Should I have to go to somebody and say, listen, it's not a good idea to commit adultery. You know, you really should not do that. Should I have to tell anybody that? I don't think so. We know all of those things. We don't need anybody to tell us that those things are wrong. But for Israel, because they were a people that were disobedient right from the beginning, the very men from which the tribes came fought and argued amongst themselves. And remember that when Joseph was born, and he was the priest of the family, that the father made him the priest of the family, that the brothers hated him, they were going to kill him. And they were the leaders, or they were the ones from which the tribes of Israel came. So you see, God had to give them a written law. But I want to tell you, if you have teenagers, if you wrote that law and put it on the wall of their bedroom in, 12-inch size letters, do you think that would make you children holy?
No.
I don't think so. But the point I want to make this morning is that no Gentile has ever been under the law of God. You got that? Paul says here, and the Gentiles which do not have the law. Now I'm not saying that the Gentiles are lawless. I'm saying that they were never put under the law of commandments. And therefore, there are two gospels in the Bible. And for some of you, that may be quite a shock to understand that. But there are two gospels because there had to be a gospel that suited those that were under the law, and there had to be a gospel for the Gentiles who are not under the law, because the whole concept of sin is totally different between those two. For instance, if Israel sinned, they broke the law. John in his epistle, because he wrote to what we call the dispersion, that was Israel when they were scattered around the world, he wrote to them and said, sin is the transgression or the breaking of the law. And so that was Israel, when they sinned, it was a legal issue. You understand? It was a legal issue because it came under the concept of law. Now, if you get pulled up by the State Patrol Police there out on the highway, and you're doing 100 miles an hour in a 50 mile an hour zone, and you say, but please sir, I wasn't thinking, I didn't really intend to do that, please, give me a little bit of grace here. He's just going to tell you, sir, you've broken the law, and you must pay the price, the penalty. Why? Because under law, there is no grace. You cannot have grace under law. Because if you break the law, then you are guilty. There's no question about it. If you break the law, you are guilty. So therefore, you cannot have grace. If you want to enjoy grace, then you must not be under a law. You cannot be. So, let's go over the page. We're in Romans now, and chapter 3 and verse 19. I want you to follow this because as I travel the world and meet so many different kinds of people and people from various church persuasions and what have you, this is a real issue, and I want you to settle it in your heart and in your mind today. It says here in verse 19, chapter 3, we know that whatever the law says, it says to them that are under the law. So Paul is making it very clear that there has to be a distinction here. He said that whatever things the law says, it will say to those that are subject to that law. For instance, if I drive here in the United States and I drive on the left-hand side of the road, if I don't get killed, the police will probably pull me up and say, hey, you're breaking the law. I say, what do you mean? Well, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. I say, no, I'm not. I'm driving on the left side of the road. I come from Australia because that's our law. He said, but sir, I'm sorry. You're not in Australia now. You're in the United States. Therefore, you come under the law of the United States. You understand? We are not Jews in the biblical sense. We are Gentiles. And therefore, we were not under the law of God. So therefore, the law as a law does not apply to us. Therefore, I cannot break the law. I am a Gentile. Now, it doesn't mean I cannot sin. Don't run away and, get ahead of me. I know you'd like to ask me 20 questions right now. I'll answer them all for you, but just wait and listen. The law is applied to those that are under the law. If Paul says the Gentiles were never under the law, then we were not under that law. Therefore, the law does not apply to us in terms of its legal stature. So he says those that are under the law are those to whom the law has been given. Therefore, he says in verse 20, by the deeds of the law no flesh shall be justified in the sight of God. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. Most Christians in the world today have a consciousness of sin. And if you have a consciousness of sin, I will tell you one thing. You will never, never, never come into the presence of God. Amen. You cannot. Not because God won't let you. It's because you won't let you. In other words, let me put this into its context now. In the tabernacle, God dwelt in the most holy place. But in the front of the most holy place was a curtain. There was